Hello and welcome to this Azure App Service migration demo. Today we'll be migrating a JBOSS EAP app from On-Prem or VMs to Azure App Service. Now before we get started, a quick look at the application itself. We have a basic store app called the Cool Store, made using JBOSS EAP and hosted on an Azure VM. This app is available on GitHub, and I'll share the link in the video description. This is meant to model a standard business application with some basic database access, and for this example, we'll assume that you're either migrating your database at another time or have already migrated it to Azure. We'll do a separate demo for database migrations, but properly configured, App Service allows you to easily connect to your database on-prem or in the cloud, making database migration out of scope for this demonstration. So, after identifying our applications to migrate, we'll need to ensure that these apps are cloud ready. To do so, we'll be using a tool called the Red Hat Migration Toolkit for Applications, or MTA, which performs source code inspection to ensure that your app will function properly in Azure App Service. Microsoft has directly contributed to the rules and source code used by this tool, giving you access to expert guidance on source code analysis and cloud readiness whenever you need it. It's an easily downloadable CLI tool available on the Red Hat MTA webpage. The tool is very easy to use and just involves supplying your source code to the CLI and then selecting App Service as your target. Now let's take a look at our MTA results. This output was produced by just running the MTA CLI on the source code of our application. Being a CLI tool, this can be automated for bulk scale cloud readiness assessments. Now looking at our Cool Store here, we can see that MTA has found some Azure App Service specific issues, none of which are categorized as cloud mandatory, meaning that we're good to migrate this app right now without any source code updates. Before we migrate though, we'll need to set up our environment in App Service. This is where an open source project from Microsoft called the LandingZone Accelerator can be helpful. LandingZone Accelerator is an open source collection of templates for enterprise environment creation in Azure App Service. ARM templates, Terraform, and Bicep templates are all readily available. Being open source means that if you don't see the perfect template from you, you can always fork the repo and modify the templates to your needs. For this demo, we're going to use the App Service Secure Baseline multi-tenant to get our environment up and running. A quick note here, you can use this tool via CLI if you need to automate the creation of multiple secure environments, but for our purposes, we'll just use the Deploy to Azure button. Clicking this takes us to the Azure portal, where we can select exactly what we need to get our environment up and running. And after template validation runs, we can create our resources. Once finished, our environment will look something like this. We now have an Azure front door setup with firewall policies to protect our enterprise apps, and an app service ready for deployment of our cloud-ready application. We can now deploy our application to our existing app service and resource group with Maven by modifying our POM file and proceeding with our deployment. I'll start by running mv clean install to grab all of our dependencies and set everything up for us. Once this is complete, I'll run this command to configure our Maven plugin. Once it finishes, we need to manually modify our POM file to specify three things: our resource group, our app name, and our subscription ID. Once this is complete, you can run mvn package Azure Web App Deploy, in this case skipping tests, and you may be asked to authenticate, and you may also need to update your firewall settings before deploying depending on where you're deploying from, but this will ultimately build, package, and deploy our application. I've already run the command, so we don't have to wait, and we can now see our application running on our app service, showing us that we've successfully migrated this Tomcat app from on-prem or VMs to Azure App Service. In summary, App Service makes it easy to deploy and scale highly available enterprise-grade code or container apps without having to worry about infrastructure. And a quick recap on what we accomplished in this demo: we identified our apps to migrate, assessed them for cloud readiness using MTA, and then updated our app to be cloud ready. Then we ultimately used LandingZone Accelerator to build our enterprise environment and deploy our app to App Service with Maven, completing our migration.